Hello and welcome to this edition of Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is Mr. Jim Randle. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Feel good.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Now, we're going to be talking about what it feels like to be an African-American man in this day and age. There's so much going on, and particularly the Alfred Wright murder that happened near Jasper, Texas, most recently. Now, it is alleged that this crime took place in, I think it's Sabine County. And there's a lot of things that's allegedly been covered up in this particular case. I'll be more specific. It's about a young man who was murdered in this county, and it's a mysterious murder that has taken place in the county. And there's been a lot of cover-up, and now the FBI has become involved. Now, being an African-American male in 2014 with an African-American president, you know, a lot of times you'll think, oh, life is changing. But, Jim, it's not. How do you feel about being an African-American male right now with all this stuff happening in our society?
I will say it feels good. It does feel good because the recognition is being elevated to another level. And, you know, you have to take your own actions into consideration. But with the story at hand, it seems that if your normal life is still under attack, if you understand, because, you know, I don't know the full demographics of the relationship between the young lady and the young man that was in this case. However, death is a result that shouldn't be at this point.
Yeah.
I feel like his life was taken a little too soon for the wrong thing.
And I definitely agree. And not only the fact that his life was taken, but the way that it was done, allegedly, was that this man's body was completely mutilated and left in a field. And from what I understand, from the autopsy report that they had in the county, they're trying to say that this young man was on drugs and that all this damage was inflicted upon his body, allegedly, from himself. Like it was self-inflicted.
Wow.
Isn't that the craziest thing?
That sounds impossible.
That sounds impossible.
From what I understood, I think they interviewed his mother and he didn't even use drugs. He didn't have a reputation for using drugs. So that's very alarming, I would think.
That's very alarming. And again, it's because everything is questionable that we're seeing.
Right.
Everything is questionable. Now, from what I understand, in reading the different stories that I've seen in the news, the young man, his car had actually broken down. While he was en route home, he called his wife and said that my car's broken down and come pick me up. Right. She called his parents. The parents went to pick him up. When they get there, couldn't find him anywhere, but they found the pickup truck that he was driving prior to it stopping in that county. And next thing we knew, I think it was 18 days later that the body was actually discovered. And ironically, Jim, the body was discovered in an area that the sheriff claimed they had already searched with dogs to sniff him out.
Thoroughly.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's what they told the parents, that this area has already been searched. Like there's no need to search that area. Right. Which I found very interesting. But ironically, the parents did their own search and got family and friends together, went back to that same area, and that's where the body was actually found.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, that's very interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
And unfortunate.
Yeah. Which shows you even more that that was a cover-up.
Definitely.
The sheriff lied and said we covered this area with search dogs that could sniff out the body and so forth, and it wasn't discovered. That's number one. Number two, when the autopsy was done in that county, it claimed that this man suffered from drugs that he put in his own body. They said it was self-induced. Okay? That was another cover-up. Then, the place where his vehicle stopped, the cameras, the surveillance cameras outside the liquor store, conveniently disappeared.
Okay.
So, when you look at all these factors and see all the things that have happened with Alfred Wright, how does that make you feel? I know for me, it makes me feel like, damn, I'm a brother. This could happen to me.
Yes.
And yourself.
It turns on the switch inside of me that, you know, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and I sometimes get a little different types of rebuttal for claiming that. But to hear these facts, it just brings me right back to that state. I mean, you have to question all the so-called facts that you've just read off to me. And me personally, I like to say that, you know, you have to be ready for all worst-case scenarios.
Yeah.
And it's sad to know that this individual was, it sounds like a law-abiding citizen, to where he probably didn't even have a criminal background. So for me to lose my life again due to some irrational person who couldn't handle whatever emotion they had to deal with,
right,
I would think that my justice system will also have my back and look further into this to make sure that it's being handled correctly.
Yes.
So I applaud his family for taking that extra step, because it takes some strength to do what the police is not doing to resolve a case at this matter. So I want to applaud that family, and I also want to show the world that us black men really can't stand for this to continue to happen. And there are ways to go about this in a nonviolent and strategic way. And I would like to stand up and be the first one to say that I will not stand for that, and I wouldn't want my daughter and my other nephews to be brought up in a world that thinks that it's okay to take a person's life with such brutal force that they did.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. And the thing about it is, when injustices are done, it's important that we stand up and say something. We can't sweep it under the rug. We can't ignore it. And, you know, I have to go back to what I said earlier. It reminds me of the things that we have already been through as African American men. How we were lynched back in the day when we were slaves and this type of thing. Modern day, this is modern day lynching happening in right now in 2014 with an African American president in the White House.
Yes.
It lets me know that it seems like we're going backwards.
Definitely.
As opposed to moving forward. But I also think that it should also be something that we should pay attention to and certainly expose youngsters to who are African American, to let them know no matter what, you have to always be aware, you have to always be careful, you have to always watch your back, and not only watch your back, but watch your actions, so that you don't find yourself in a position for anything like this to happen. Now, it can happen to innocent people, and this young man was innocent. That was no reason for him to be murdered. Now, it is alleged that he was having an affair on his wife, who happened to be a Caucasian woman, and he was actually having an affair, allegedly, with another Caucasian woman who happened to be the daughter of the sheriff in that county. So for him to come up dead mysteriously, and then for all the autopsy report to come back saying it was drug-induced, for the cameras to disappear off the front of the liquor store, just gone all of a sudden once this stuff hits the fan. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then for his parents to have a second autopsy done where you discover that all these things happened to this young man's body that he could not have possibly done to himself. But the coroner is trying to say that it was self-inflicted because of drugs. That's crazy.
That's very crazy. And, you know, I want to applaud you as well for having a show and having the courage to stand up for such matters as this. And we can have this type of panel because
thank you.
Our voices are going to be heard and our actions have to be recorded. So you can't pretty much expect for violence to undo nonviolent activities. Let's reverse it. Let's show our nonviolent intentions and then also illustrate that we can't continue to let this happen. And like you said, this happened back then, and as we say, history does repeat itself, but it doesn't have to, at least not in this life. Now, I remember my parents telling me before I left the house, you know, behave yourself. Right. Someone's always watching. And you have to carry yourself in knowing that. So I'm not glorifying the fact that it's okay you had an affair or who did what. Right. But we all have to be accountable for our actions and be very careful in this world.
And you know what, you said a lot in just saying that we all do have to be accountable for our actions in this world, because there is a price to pay when we are not accountable for our actions. It's important that we take care of ourselves, that we watch ourselves, that we watch our mental state and our well-being. It's important that we move about in the world the right way so that we don't bring anything on us. Although we can still do it innocently, it still happens in America. You guys stick around. We're going to continue to talk about the Alfred Wright case. We'll be back in just a moment with more of Let's Talk About It.
The search is over, and the rumors can now be put to rest after the body of Alfred Wright was found only feet away from where he was last seen. Good evening to you, East Texas. I'm Ferrell Phelps. Glad you're with us tonight. After 3 weeks of search efforts by foot and air, the body of 28-year-old Jasper man who went missing in Hemphill earlier this month has been found. Despite the ground search being called off, Alfred Wright's body was found about 50 yards away from his actual disappearance site. Our East Texas News 9's Michelle Reed has been covering the story from the very beginning and went out to the dark and rainy recovery site tonight to find out more on this evolving mystery.
The search for Alfred Wright has come to a somber end. they're being family, they're tore up by it, you know, so they're in deep sorrow.
Private investigator Chuck Foreman says the Wright family hired him last week to help them continue the ground search efforts to find Alfred. And that's when they stumbled upon his body 50 yards in the woods, right near Customs Road in Hemphill, where Alfred was last.
As long as you don't try to step beyond this point, I have no problem with you. As long as you remain in your place, I have no problem with you. As long as you stay under me, I have no problem with you. But you bet not step forward. Oh, I wish I had. See, y'all missing it. Y'all missing it. See, that's the thing about it, is that folk are happy as long as you are where you are.
All right, welcome back to Let's Talk About It, where my guest today is Mr. Jim Randle. Jim, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey.
Thank you so much for coming. You know what, Jim? Now, you know we were talking about the Alfred Wright case and what happened with that. And I'm just, you know, when I think about it, I'm like, what could possibly be in the mindset of another human being to actually take out that type of anger or whatever you would call it on another human being, to actually take his life and mutilate his body in such a way? What kind of person could do that?
Well, you know, this is a brutal world. This is, you know, it's not peaches and cream.
Mm-hmm.
We can go back to the medieval times, and we've seen some torture and the different types of exercise when it comes to punishment and so forth. So there are persons in this world that can be just as extreme. Now, the thing that we have to now look into, take into consideration, is the laws. We have a police force that investigates every case that happens. So if a person has the audacity to carry out such a brutal act, we should have a law enforcement that can be just as aligned to not take into consideration and just think that it was just. There's nothing just about, from the description that you just gave me, how this person was murdered. I just can't go that far. However, it does exist. This world is not peaches and cream, as I say. So, protection is what the state of Texas allow us to carry arms for. I believe that's one of the main reasons why we are still allowed to carry arms, is because there are sick minds in this world that can go that far. Now, this case at hand, it sounds like it was very unjust. And it was very unfortunate that the media can exploit it and we still not understand and get the real facts of what could have happened.
Right. And that's why I'm hoping through this type of dialogue, this type of show, that those types of things can be brought to the forefront, discussed, talked about, and something done.
Yes.
You know, something that's going to make a difference. Unfortunately, with the legal system that we're talking about, internally, there's a lot of illegal stuff happening internally that allows these external things to take place, and then they cover it up.
Right.
It's covered up from the inside. It's starting from that inside. So you got a lot of crooked and corrupt law officials. And obviously, the sheriff, I'm just going to say it, in Sabine, or whoever he is, whose daughter was allegedly sleeping with this brother, 6'3", muscle-bound dude, probably a fantasy of hers, I'm just going to say it like it is, and he was hitting it. He was married and he was hit. That's just, I'm keeping it real with y'all. And as a result of that, this young man is now dead. His life is now gone because of that experience. And even though he was maybe having allegedly an extramarital affair, it does not warrant your life being taken and your body being mutilated in such a way, like you're an animal, man. I mean, they mutilated this guy's body.
You know, interesting that you stated that the sheriff started the investigation and pretty much eliminated a certain area for search, and then the family had to go and search that same area and then to find some evidence that could probably lead to the conviction of what happened. So not to bring the sheriff to the forefront, but he's put himself at the forefront for being in that situation. And I think that we should go a lot deeper into the relationship between this young black African-American, this young Caucasian that he was dating.
The sheriff's daughter.
The sheriff's daughter. And put them under a different type of light that could probably get some better answers.
And you know what? I think that's what's going to happen, because now, from what I understand, the FBI has now gotten involved in this case, so that this type of thing can be exposed and they can find out exactly what happened. Because there were so many things that were being covered up and hidden by the people in that county, which made them go back. Hey, something ain't right.
Right.
You know. And I say this all the time: the squeaky wheel gets the oil. If you just sit back and don't say nothing, don't make a sound, don't make a noise, nobody's going to know about what's going on. But damn it, I'm going to talk about it. And the name of this show is Let's Talk About It. And so we're talking about what's happening today in our society, because it doesn't make sense. And you know what else? Allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly now. Allegedly, what I've heard is that this young woman who Alfred Wright was having the affair with has actually told people that she don't even know this dude.
But they did work together.
But they worked together.
In a small town.
In a small town. And everybody knew him. He was some type of therapist in that town, very well known dude.
Okay.
And she's acting like she don't even know this man at all. But there are people that know about their relationship, that were friends to them and so forth, that know about the relationship, allegedly know about the relationship. But this sister she ain't no sister. But this young Caucasian woman has denounced this man completely and said she never heard of him, never saw all this kind of stuff. But on the backside, allegedly, he was handling up in the bedroom. I'm just keeping it real. Allegedly. And so now his life is gone.
And that's very
His life is very unfortunate. But I pray and I hope that it is uncovered with the FBI's investigation in that county. I hope that that sheriff, who I feel was probably behind the foolishness, I hope he gets busted in the butt so he can get to see what it feels like when you have this type of thing happen in your life.
What's the saying? What's done in the dark will come to the light?
What's done in the dark will come to the light. And I hope a whole bunch of light shines on him when people get to see what he has done in that county and trying to hide it and cover it up. And also the person who did the autopsy. For them to do an autopsy report and give the report back and say, oh, this was drug-induced. This guy was on drugs. That's why these things happen to his body. How the hell that's going to happen to your body? How the hell you going to get your eyes gouged out, your ear cut off, your face cut off, your tongue taken out, your teeth taken out, your manhood removed and placed in your mouth? Come on now. That ain't no damn drugs. Somebody did that, and somebody needs to pay the cost.
And the stand starts now. I'm with you on that, brother.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you don't, you got to stand up and talk about these types of things.
Yes.
And I don't mind talking about it because it's real. It's what's happening in our society. We're seeing it every day. And guess what? It could be one of us.
Now, you know, I'm thinking as we speak, this is probably what, the 5th or 6th case of somewhat of hate crime that's happened this year in 2014. And the stand has to come now, folks. We have to take control of our laws. And if it takes legislation and politics to stand up, I believe that's where we need to start at. And for us young individuals such as myself, when you're out conducting your life, you have to be mindful of the injustice world that we live in and remind that. Don't forget it. Don't forget
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, it can almost make you fearful if you're not careful.
In a sense.
In a sense.
Yes.
And fearful from the perspective of just having the awareness, I would say,
Right.
of what could happen. Because it seems like, to me, there has been a huge rise in the increase of these types of crimes happening to African-American men all over the country. You take the case in Florida with the guy playing his music that was killed. You take Trayvon Martin,
Yes.
who was killed again in Florida, I think it was.
Right.
With behind, I forget the guy's name who actually
Mark Zimmerman.
Zimmerman.
Hate to say his name.
Who exactly murdered this young man. And if you look at his record now, you can see the things that he's continued to do.
Right.
Even after he got off from killing Trayvon Martin. If you look at his record, he's caused other issues right after that. You know, and
Exactly.
eventually he's gonna do some other crazy stuff that's gonna probably put him back in jail.
Let's just watch. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I don't know how we can eradicate this type of thing happening in society. I don't know how we can change this type of thing happening in society. But I do know that we can speak out about it to make people more aware of what's going on right now.
Yes.
Because it's a travesty and a tragedy for the young African-American men. For somebody to feel like they have the right to extract a life, to take away somebody's brother, to take away somebody's father, somebody's uncle, somebody's child. You think you have the right to do that. You don't have the right to do that. And this type of social injustice has got to end. And I hope they uncover this Sabine County situation and cover it and uncover it so that the world can see the wrong and the injustices that are happening right here today in our America. It's terrible.
Yes, it is.
It's terrible. I just want to, I hope you guys have gained something from watching this show, that you learned a little bit more about this particular case that you didn't know about it. And you can certainly just get on the internet and just look up the Alfred Wright murder to find out more information about this particular killing that's now being investigated by the FBI. I just thank you guys for joining me and for listening in on this particular segment of Let's Talk About It. I hope you were educated and motivated to change something in your life and inspired to make a difference in this world. Jim, thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Let's Talk About It.
Thank you, sir.
All right. All right, you guys. In closing today on Let's Talk About It, we've talked about the topic of murder and the things that are happening in the black community to our young black men. And we named a list of actually a number of cases that have actually taken place, such as Trayvon Martin, such as the Alfred Wright case, such as the one that happened in Florida with the young men playing their music loud. And also there was a African-American woman who simply fired a shot into the air. And for that, I think she got 20 years or something that was outlandish. She didn't even shoot anyone, just simply fired a shot in the air. When you look at these types of things, you know that there's a lot of social injustice that's taking place in America. Now, we were talking a minute ago about the Trayvon Martin case. I just want to rectify this and clear this up. I think we said the name Mark Zimmerman. And that was an error on our part. But it was actually George Zimmerman that did the killing of Trayvon Martin in Florida. So I just want to get that cleared up. I thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of Let's Talk About It, and my wonderful guest, Mr. Jim Randle, who's sitting next to me. Thank you very much. All right. You guys can certainly reach us at Let's Talk About It 12TV at gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12TV at gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube by simply typing in the name Ferrell Phelps or Let's Talk About It, and we will come up. Thanks so much for joining me on this edition of Let's Talk About It. Until next time, folks, we'll see you then.
It was a case that became known for its brutality. A black man dragged to death, chained to the back of a pickup truck in Jasper, Texas. Now, alleged white supremacist Lawrence Russell Brewer has been executed for his role in the murder of James Byrd, Jr., dying by lethal injection. Brewer says he took part in the assault on Byrd, but had nothing to do with the killing as far as driving the truck. But he told a Texas television station that the execution would be a good out and that he's glad it's about to come to an end. Testimony showed Byrd was offered a ride, then bound by his ankles with a heavy logging chain attached to a bumper. His remains were left outside a black church and cemetery. Another man in the incident is on death row, his case under appeal. A third man received life in prison. Lee Powell, The Associated Press.